today I am joined by my friend and founder of draft.dev, Karl Hughes. Draft.dev is a niche content agency focused on technical audiences.
As a business owner, if you are constantly chasing short-term results, you're never going to build a lasting legacy in your business.
Talk a little bit about what sobriety is meant for you as an entrepreneur.
It makes living life hard mode. You're going to sleep worse, have harder financial times, issues with your relationships because you start to hide this stuff. It's like putting shackles on yourself and then saying, I want to go do something really hard. It's just dumb. The more consistently you show up in front of people, the more likely you are to actually become a consideration for a purchase. This is something I've realized about like running a small business, is especially when you're the founder who built everything early on, you built those personal relationships, those people signed with you personally, and they're used to talking to you every week. Very hard to break up with them.
Welcome to Life's a Pitch. I am your host, Jared Gibson, and today I am joined by my friend, Karl Hughes. One of those people who's built a really interesting career across a few different worlds. He started out leading software engineering teams at venture-backed startups, then jumped into entrepreneurship and launched draft.dev in 2020. Great year to start a business. Draft.dev is a niche content agency focused on technical audiences. Within 2 years, he scaled that to a little over 2.5 million in ARR. Since then, he stepped back from the day-to-day and focused on buying and building service businesses. He's recently acquired an audio and video production company called The Podcast Consultant. And he also hosts the Retain Trust podcast, where he talks to agency owners about how they're building profitable, sustainable businesses. Karl and I met through EO Chicago some years back, and even though I'm definitely a little bit older than he is, he's absolutely someone I look up to and rely on for advice many a times. Karl, what's up, man?
Good to see you, Jared. And the feeling is mutual. I feel like, this is what's cool about being on the entrepreneurial journey. It doesn't matter who's got a bigger company or whatever. Like that's a stupid metric because like we all have different skills that we're good in. I've always admired you have a lot more real sales skills, I think, than I do. I think I've hacked it and I'm doing okay, but like you kind of know how to really do it. And so I look to you for those sorts of things. You can look to me for whatever little advice I can give, but it's fun to have these conversations either way.
Yeah, you think I've cracked that? I have no clue what the hell I'm doing. It's just,
well, none of us
still
do.
Just
like, none
right?
of us do. I think this is again like a common from the outside. A common assumption is that like because a company is so big and the person running it is in charge, they must know what they're doing. They must every night go to sleep with a sound mind, and like it's just not true. Once you meet owners of businesses 20x bigger than ours, you're just see the same problems, same insecurities, same challenges. So like it doesn't go away. It's much bigger than that.
Yeah. Well, it is true though what I mentioned at the beginning. Like when I'm talking to, as you know, Kelly and Brandon, my two co-founders, as we're talking through certain ideas, like one of us inevitably will bring up like, wonder what Karl thinks about this. Let's get Karl's thoughts on this. So we do appreciate you, but let's get into it, dude. I want to. So your entrepreneurial journey has been very interesting. I know that, as well as I know your story, it's been somewhat of a roller coaster, a lot of highs, a lot of lows. But one of the things, and we're going to start serious today. One of the things that I think has really impacted you is your sobriety, like your sobriety through building this company and everything. Talk a little bit about what sobriety has meant for you as an entrepreneur and how it's helped you kind of push away kind of a lot of the mental demons that you may have had in the past.
Yeah, man. It's something that it doesn't get brought up much because I think, you know me pretty well, but a lot of other people from the outside, maybe it's not something you want to lead with because it's a sensitive topic and not everybody likes to talk about it, right? I spent close to 10 years completely sober after college, went back and thought maybe I'll, try drinking again, and it did not work for me. And, I'm fortunate. I'm one of these people that like when I drank a lot and I liked it, but I didn't ever do really, really detrimental things like, drive or get violent or anything like that. So it never had major effects on my life, but I just knew it was, as a substance, it was not good for me. And I didn't like the way it made me come to work and to family every day. And so I quit drinking again. It was about 3 years ago, I think now. Yeah, I mean, if you have substance abuse like challenges in your life, if you're a slave to them, it makes living life hard mode for sure. I mean, you're going to sleep worse when you're on whatever your substance is. This applies to any drug or alcohol or addiction, I think. But you're going to sleep worse. You're going to have harder financial times. You're going to have harder issues with your relationships and people around you because you start to hide this stuff. So it's like putting shackles on yourself and then saying, I want to go do something really hard. It's just dumb to be doing it that way. It's hard. Life is hard enough, right? We don't need one more challenge like that. So, for me, it was looking at the things in my life that were important and realizing that this like alcohol, this crutch that I was using to kind of escape some of the stressors that I might have in a day-to-day life was definitely not worth the downside of waking up feeling terrible, feeling like I every night just needed to find a way to get a little bit buzzed. It's a totally unproductive habit. And so I've kicked it twice now, and it's interesting. I'm a very black and white person when it comes to habits and things that I do. It's not one of these things where I spent months in relapsing back and forth. I kind of just turn the switch off, and for me that works. When I tell myself I'm not gonna drink anymore, I just don't. Again, weird quirk of my personality. I have very high discipline, but also am very obsessive, and so I get obsessed with things. I do too much of them, and if my discipline kicks in, it says just stop doing that thing, and I just stop doing it. I've run half marathons, and that's very much a discipline thing. I've been an alcoholic, very much not a discipline thing, and then I've turned it off, and now I guess that is very much a discipline thing. So it's just like this trait I'm like trying to learn how to live with in my life. It's always going to be there, this like kind of addictive personality trait, and I'm very aware of it when it comes to other things. I'm actually this is a tangent, but I'm on a cut down on caffeine kick right now because I realized I'd like kind of crept up to 3, maybe 4 cups of coffee some days, and I'm like, I gotta cut the dependence down,
it's like
starting to
twitch.
I have like a day where I don't have it, and I'm like feeling crappy, and I'm like, I don't like that feeling, so I'm down to 1 cup a day, which is probably a much better sustainable level. So we'll anyway, this is something I'm probably always going to wrestle with in my life, but it's also part of what feeds my drive to like push into business is like this obsessive personality. So I can't take the good without the bad.
Yeah. Let me ask you as a follow-up there, like, was there an aha moment? So both times that you quit, and even with coffee, like, is there that one aha moment where you're like, shit, like I gotta fix something right now?
That's a good question. It was definitely less dramatic. It just built. It was like over time I just started thinking to myself, is this really how I want to spend my life? Do I really want to continually rely on this substance to level me out, to make me feel good, to forget my issues? Or do I want to just learn to face those issues and hard things? Something that I've really come back to several times in the last 5 years of being an entrepreneur has been that you only grow by facing the things that actually scare you and that actually challenge you. Escaping them, whether it's through alcohol or avoidance or whatever, is not a way to grow. It's just a way to avoid pain. It's like, this analogy is a little off course here, but this is something a lot of people who are friends of mine will ask, like, I really like this part of my job, but my boss wants to give me a promotion to this, and that's going to be doing stuff I don't like. Should I just stay in the job I'm in, or should I take the promotion? And like, to me, I don't understand the mindset that tells you should do just what you like every day. Like, seriously, like, I'd like playing video games. I'd go play video games all day, but I'd have no money, and I'd be unhappy with myself, and I'd have no accomplishments. Like, there's a lot of things I like to do that aren't going to be things I could just do all day. So I think assuming that the path that you should take is the things that are easiest or that you like to do is a really dangerous assumption, because you're going to end up going nowhere. So for me, quitting drinking was the hard thing. It was the thing that was not comfortable and that was going to require some change to habits and make me face some of these challenges and stressors head on. But that's the right thing. And often when I see those challenges, I'm like, I got to go the hard way. That's probably the way that's going to lead to the most growth over time.
Yeah. It's a great point. I had a good friend of mine, actually previous guest on the podcast, Larry Seiler. He lives by the motto of "do hard things," so it kind of fits right there. So well said. All right, let's get into. Appreciate you sharing that. First off, I know, like, I love the vulnerability, and I think that's one thing that it's preached in the EO community is being vulnerable. So I want to jump into content. So content is a massive part of your world. It's a massive part of my world. And you and I had a discussion a few weeks ago, and I was saying we were talking about attribution. Like, how do you attribute like ROI or any type of ROI, whatever that is, back to organic content on LinkedIn? Specifically, we were talking about LinkedIn at the time. And I'm not going to give away what you said, but I thought it was very interesting. So why don't it's a mess right now, right? And I think everybody's trying to figure out, like, is this worth our time to do this? How do you connect content to pipeline on platforms like LinkedIn?
Yeah. So I probably gave you some version of this answer that when it comes down to it, it's impossible to make a one-to-one connection every time. I think whenever you go into any marketing channel, but especially organic ones that are more compounding over time, content is being a big one, there's almost never a direct ROI link, especially early on, and it's almost never on a lead by lead basis that you know that this thing happened because of this post. Like, just isn't going to happen. But here's what happens. The reality is, the more consistently you show up in front of people who are in market or adjacent to in-market buyers, the more likely you are to stay top of mind and to actually become a consideration for a purchase. And so the way that looks is when I first started draft.dev, I started writing about what I was learning, running a little content agency, and as a former developer, started writing. A lot of my first few customers were people who I reached out to cold and said, hey, I'd like to have a conversation with you when I very first started the business. I just want to hear how you currently solve the problem of technical content at your company. And I just want to ask you questions. That's it. I don't have anything to sell. There's nothing. Like, I'm just another former developer who wants to write. That's it. And I want to learn more. Had 100 of those conversations in the first year at draft.dev, and I connected with every one of those people on LinkedIn. I never pitched them in on anything. But I wrote on LinkedIn every week or two, and I had consistently things to say about what I was learning from those conversations, some of the observations, and then what I was learning as we started to actually get clients. And those people all became some of our earliest clients. Now, can I measure exactly which ones did and didn't, or which ones sent me referrals that did or didn't? No, it's just impossible. And it took 6 to 12 months to really see any lift that I could actually measure, but it certainly happens. And so now that I've seen that, I'm always going to invest in compounding channels like content. Again, whether your choice is LinkedIn or a blog or video content or a podcast, it really, I don't think it matters that much. These channels all work very similarly, and you should do the ones that make the most sense for you or that you're most comfortable with, because it's the key is you have to do it consistently for a long period of time to see results.
What do you say to the people that would say LinkedIn was very different back then, right? And today, and not just LinkedIn, like, I think all the platforms are very different.
Anything, right?
Like, is that just an easy cop-out argument to say that reach is down?
All marketing is different today than it was 5 years ago, and it will be different again in 5 more years. Like, does that mean you don't do it? No, it's fucking stupid. No.
That's what I want to say. I want to just say that. Say that again. Does it mean you don't do it? No, that's just fucking stupid.
Right. Does it mean you don't do it? No, that's just fucking stupid.
Yes.
So yeah, I'll say that again. Like, I do think, like, this is again where as a business owner, if you are constantly chasing short-term results, you're never going to build a lasting legacy in your business. You're never going to build something that grows beyond you. You're going to build this little thing that found a hack that worked once to get 10 customers. Then you found a second hack that got you 10 more customers. You're constantly on the treadmill of finding a quick way to get somebody in the door. That's not really a sustainable pathway to a business that can grow without the owner. And so to me, when it comes to like evaluating marketing channels for our businesses, so I'm not even going to talk about what our clients do. That can be a different story. But like for our businesses that we run, we look at channels as, is this going to compound and improve over time? Or is this a channel that we throw money at and we constantly throw money, more and more money at to keep getting more results? We just every time we prefer the former to the latter. And it's partly because we have long timeline. We're looking at this as a 10-year venture, not a 1 or 3 year venture. But it's also partly just a discipline thing. Like we see over and over the companies that stick with marketing channels, compounding marketing channels, and learn to do them well and consistently stay with what's new and what's happening are the ones who win in the long term. So I'll take another personal example at your question directly, like answer engines or LLMs, ChatGPT in a specific term, like ChatGPT has completely changed how people find services online. Both of our business get now half of their leads from LLMs, which is crazy. It was, a year ago there was like a few here and there, and now it's half of our leads. So does that mean you should not do LLM marketing because it might change again in another 3 or 4 years? No. And did the SEO work we did before, was that a waste? No. A lot of that paid off now in how LLMs work. It's like a very similar model. It's just tweaks on the same base idea. So like all the stuff that you do in marketing and the activities you do, the ways you learn the platforms will continue to change for sure. But you only learn how they change by doing them. So you do stuff on LinkedIn, you see if it works today. If it doesn't, you evolve and you change and you figure out what does work for you. Go back to that initial quote. Like, just if you don't want to do any marketing that will change, then just don't do marketing and just throw in the towel now.
Yeah. How do you know it's working? Like, how do you know it's actually working? Let's talk about the compounding. Let's stay on LinkedIn.
Yeah. So like I like to look at different sets of metrics and try to evaluate all of them. So there's the leading metrics of, are we actually getting any impressions in this channel? So we'll take LinkedIn and say like, am I posting stuff regularly and am I actually getting impressions every week? I post I think 3-ish times a week on LinkedIn, and I can get anywhere from 2,000 impressions on a low week to 300,000 impressions on a good week, right? So that's my top of funnel. That's the most possible exposure. And then there's interactions on the platform. And then there's sort of conversions off the platform. So did I get people to click through to links on things? I would track all of those. And then I would also look at, and do also look at, when people fill in our forms for sales calls, where did you hear about us? Did LinkedIn come up? Did referral come up? If a referral came up, is it from a LinkedIn connection? And likely it was partly a LinkedIn thing. So anyway, all that to say, like, there's plenty of things you can measure here. You're never going to get perfect one-to-one attribution of this post led to this sales call, or very rarely are you going to get that. But that doesn't mean that nothing is happening there, because if you're seeing interactivity, you're seeing interactions, you're seeing some conversions, you at least have a model you can build off of and know that it's worth doing. Yeah.
I love the idea of, in the form on the website, when people are booking those calls, including asking that question in there.
Yeah, you got to have that. And then you ask them if they don't fill it out. Like, if you make it optional, you ask them first thing on a sales call, do you remember how you ran across us? Just curious, because I want to keep an eye out for anything that's happening. And like, look, we're a marketing agency. It would be stupid if we didn't ask that, and it would kind of show that we were naive if we didn't ask that. I think, like, I've never had anybody say, I'm not going to tell you. They may say I don't remember, but
if somebody said that, like, all right, dude, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Right, like, we're done.
Right. It's a secret. I can't tell you how I found you. Thanks. It's always a easy question to ask if you remember, but it does give you, again, in the other thing, I don't know, we've talked about this too, Jared, like, it's almost always multi-channel now too. The reality is, like, a lot of times what I'm doing on LinkedIn is actually more about nurturing the people I had a sales call with than it is getting net new leads, because the workflow is like this. You book a sales call because somebody told you about us, or you found out about us through an LLM. You hear my pitch, you say, maybe it's not right for us yet, right? And maybe we need to raise money first, or maybe we need to go do some other stuff in-house first. We need to make this higher. Okay, great. I'm going to connect with you on LinkedIn, and I'm going to be posting every week. And eventually you will see me at a time when you are ready to actually make this purchasing decision. And I just want to make sure I'm in your feed with some regularity. So that's the power of it. And you just don't want to lose that by just ignoring the platform entirely.
Yep. Awesome. Love it. And I think that's good. We could literally have an entire 2-hour conversation on just this. But I want to jump into your world today, the podcast world. So you didn't just start a podcast. You have a podcast. You didn't just start a podcast. You actually bought a podcast production company. What is the thing that makes you so confident today that podcasting is still like a very strong channel, as you're on my podcast right now that I started a few months ago? Yeah.
It's interesting. When my business partner and I got together, it was now 3 years ago. So we've actually owned that company almost 3 years. But we got together 3 years ago and said, like, what business service do we think there's going to be more demand for in 10 years than there is today? We unanimously said, like, podcast or video podcast production of some kind. It might look different in 10 years. Like, maybe companies are more worried about YouTube channels or TikTok channels than they are the long form audio podcast. I don't know. But either way, it's the same broad skill set, and there's so much crossover that we figure that like space is something we want to be in. And so when we bought the podcast consultant 3 years ago, we were looking for a company that had a strong foothold with a large range of clients. So they had about 80 clients, not much concentration, and good industry focus. So a lot of their clients were in the financial services industry, investors, funds, VCs, things like that. So when we found this company, it's like that was like checked all the boxes for us. And so we were very confident that like this was a good base to build from, and it's been great. It's learning to run somebody else's company is a totally different challenge, but it's a super good one to go through as an entrepreneur. It just really like refines some of the skills that I got like starting my own.
What were some of the things you didn't expect? Like when you bought that first company, because I know that you, and I want to ask a follow-up question to this, but I know that you've been heavily right now involved with purchasing and evaluating other companies. What's that one thing that you're like, shit, did not see that one coming with the purchase of a company?
One of the most surprising things was that when I bought a company, I felt much less attachment to the clients, the team, and the way things worked. That's a good and bad thing. Mm-hmm. This is not a judgment of like you should or shouldn't feel that. But in some ways, it allowed me to look at the business more objectively. So when we came in, we spent a few months kind of learning how the ropes of how it worked on the day that we bought it, and we got the previous owner out of the day-to-day and kind of filled in his shoes. And the next thing we did was said, we don't want all these clients. Some of these clients are just no good anymore. Like we got to raise prices to get some of the bottom 20% out. Did that, and I think the previous owner, like when I've talked to him, we're still good friends. He was like, yeah, that was probably the right move, but I knew these people personally, so it was a lot harder for him to detach from them and to like tell them like, hey, you got to go. Like it's not worth it anymore. And so this is something I've realized about like running a small business is, especially when you're the founder who built everything early on, you built those personal relationships. Those people signed with you personally, and they're used to talking to you every week. Very hard to break up with them, even if it's not a good business decision for you to keep working with them. And I even feel that a little bit with some of my clients. I remember feeling this with some of the clients at draft.dev when I was really involved in every sales call, like kind of having a little bit of like, oh, I hope we don't lose them, But now, again, like the podcast consultant and draft.dev both, I've just learned you've got to look at it more objectively and say like, okay, by the numbers, is this really a person we can sustainably work with, or do we need to move on and just say like, look, we'll give you as nice an off-ramp as possible. And now we've fired a ton of clients, both directly where we've gone to them and said, you're not a good fit for us anymore, we're sorry, here's a couple other options, or by just raising their price and saying, look, this is the new floor that we've got to work with. Both methods can work. And I've never had anybody be like angry about it. They've always understood. It's again, these things in reality are business decisions, not personal. So you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, you built businesses and you bought businesses. Like, which one scratches the itch more for you today as an entrepreneur? Is it building something from scratch, or is it buying something that already exists?
Well, it's a lot of fun to build stuff from scratch. I mean, I've always had little like side projects that I spend more or less time on for fun, but it's super hard to justify spending the time to build something from scratch that's going to be a real significant venture when you already own companies with a few $1 million in revenue. So, I mean, again, if you think about it, like for every hour of time I spend improving draft.dev, that could increase our revenue 10, 15, 20%. That's a fantastic ROI versus starting something from zero. It may take me a year to figure out how to get customers for it. And so there's a huge like gap there between the payoff period. The other thing I'll say about buying is you're essentially like saying, I could spend a lot of time trying to go get customers and raise revenue 10, 15, 20% at my company, or I could go find a company that's the same size as ours and double in a year by buying it. Yeah. So that's really interesting as well if you're looking to grow fast or you're looking to kind of up-level yourself and push over a plateau. A lot of M&A happens because of growth plateaus. It wasn't necessarily the case in our case, but I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs now, and agencies, service businesses tend to hit these plateaus at around $1 million in revenue, around $3 million in revenue, or $5 million in revenue, and then 10 or 20, and where it's really hard to grow in your current market with the way you do things. And sometimes buying your way out of that hump can kind of help you sort of overcome the gap there. So that's a good compelling case for it. But I think in general, it just comes down to like, if you are looking to move faster, buy something that already has product market fit or service market fit. If you just like the creative process and you don't have a like fast timeline to work against, then start your own thing. I get it. Like, or you just don't want to take on debt for some philosophical reason or whatever, then, you know, you don't have the cash, then yeah, sure, you can just start your own thing. So I would start my own thing again at some point in my life probably, but at this point it is a lot faster to make progress on agency growth by just acquiring.
What would you say to somebody that hadn't really thought about being acquired, but there's starting to be some whispers and conversations around it? Like if somebody were like, hey, you know, we want to potentially acquire you, we want to go through it, like from a mindset, like this is your baby that you built, right? What should we as business owners be thinking about when that conversation starts?
Yeah, you really need to understand how buyers value your kind of company. And so this is going to differ for every type of industry and size of company that you have. So again, what I mean is if you're running a $100 million revenue SaaS business, your valuation is very different from a $2 million marketing agency. Like the whole formula is totally different. The kinds of buyers you can get, the multiples you can get, it's all totally different. And not just because it like scales linearly, like it's an exponential scale. So like just understand what you're really dealing with. So in doing that, what you'll see for most, and I'm going to speak to like the kind of agencies we buy since that's where most of my experience is, but like we're looking to buy, you know, $1 million to $3 million top line revenue marketing agencies. Not many buyers out there for this kind of thing. So a lot of these companies just kind of either dwindle away as the owner decides to retire, or they get passed on to an employee or bought by a competitor maybe. And so for these kind of companies, we're not going to be giving enough money that the owner's going to get to just ride off into the sunset. Nobody's going to buy these things for $10 million. They get bought at, you know, it's going to be a 2 to 4 times net earnings. So SDE is what we call it. But anyway, it's like, it basically means 2 to 4 times your annual net revenue or net profit. And if you're willing to part with your company for that kind of number, then you should pursue a sale, and you should actually build up a few options for buyers. Run a bit of a process, whether you go through a broker or you do it on your own. You don't want to just take the one offer that one person gave you. It's not the best. I mean, if you go that route, you will take a haircut on the deal. And so if you're really the ideal situation is you think 3 years, I want to sell my business. Start prepping today, and by year 3, you're going to be in a really good spot with a lot of good interested prospects of buyers, and you'll have already talked to all of them and had relationships with them. You'll have already got all the documents in place and the financials in place and all the processes cleaned up and standardized. That's the ideal case. Now, does that happen? Almost never. And I'm not saying you have to do that, but it is kind of a good thing to understand what. It is definitely a good thing to understand what a buyer is looking for and how they actually value your company, so that you can go into those conversations with some frame of reference. Otherwise, you're going to be completely shocked, good or bad, by the valuation that they give you, and you have no idea if that's even in the ballpark.
Yeah, awesome. That's great advice as somebody that has a business and definitely has aspirations someday to potentially sell.
We're all going to sell someday, right? I mean, I think unless it just the wheels fall off, I want to sell someday too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. I say awesome a lot on these podcasts. I realize that as I go through and I edit some of them, I'm like, oh, that's a word that I could probably drop.
Anyway. Use some AI to swap it out for other words sometimes.
Yeah,
maybe.
Radical, man. That was radical.
Super.
With all the businesses that you're working on right now, like what's the biggest challenge you're dealing with? Like where's your focus right now? Where are you spending your time, the challenges you're having?
Yeah, it varies. So what I found is the challenge with buying these small agencies. So I didn't really explain the thesis we're working against, but we kind of saw that you running a very specialized niche agency like draft.dev or the podcast consultant is great in that it serves a very specific customer base, so you can get in front of them consistently, fairly cheaply. You get a lot of referrals from that, but they're not huge total addressable markets. Like there may be only a few hundred or a few low thousand customers we could ever get, so it's never going to be a massive enterprise on its own. So we thought by buying several of these kind of specialized agencies, we can kind of consolidate some of the back office costs that are hard to hard to manage when you're just running a single small business. But when you have multiples, you can kind of stack the revenue and have enough margins to, like, say, have a shared HR function or a shared marketing team, a shared process improvement team that goes in and, like, automates things. So we're building that now as we have two companies that are on the front end. So the thing that's challenging is that these companies are still so small, they don't have a lot of redundancy in their day-to-day operations. So if, like, an operations director leaves, somebody's got to step in there and do that job. And often we don't have a junior employee who's, like, ready for that leap. So we'll have to come in there until we can hire someone. So what happens as owners is we become temporary bottlenecks as we're stepping in to do a role that we aren't used to doing, plus trying to hire to backfill that role at the same time. And all of the acquisition activity that we want to do kind of has to get toned down so we can actually do that. So the biggest challenge that we have is managing these two separate businesses that each have a little bit of, like, there's not a lot of redundancy and things can change quickly, and we have to step in and do roles. And then we're trying to, simultaneously keep deal flow moving and buying companies. And then you have to line up financing. There's a whole bunch of things that happen. So that's kind of the big challenge right now. I think the hope is that we can get the individual operating companies large enough that they can have real, like, COOs or somebody like that who can be in charge of that and be the backstop on any roles and help hire and backfill them. It's still, again, you still don't, who's their backup? Like we are, and I think this is a problem in any portfolio, holdco kind of business. And I think it kind of gets this challenge. I don't think I realized how real it was until I got here. And I'm like, oh yeah, that does, like, I see why this is hard. Anyway, so yeah.
Yeah. How important is niching to you guys, industry niche, when you're looking at a business?
So often businesses don't know or don't want to admit that they're specialized or niche down. It's funny, like, we look at a lot of CIMs, the confidential memorandum, infinite or confidential, what is that? Information memorandum. I don't remember what it's called. It's like but anyway, it's like the basic, what is this company sheet, right? That every broker puts together. So we look at a lot of those. And a lot of times they'll tout things like, this $3 million company made revenue from 30 different clients in 6 different industries. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound good. That means they're all over the place. Like, they don't have any specialization. But then you look at revenue by client and you realize, oh, their top 5 clients are actually all in banking. And these other ones are, like, just scattered 1 or 2 here and there. So, like, there's a really good opportunity for this agency to lean into, we're a banking focused marketing, agency. And they just haven't done it. And usually it's because they're scared to, because they're scared to say no to their other customers. They're scared their old customers will find out and they'll immediately drop them. I don't get it, because personally I've seen so much more success from going very specific with your customer. In fact, so specific that people often go, I can't believe there's actually a market for that. But I love that, because what it means is you're the only one. When people ask, hey, who's a podcast producer that can work with financial podcasts? Oh, the podcast consultant. They do only that. That's their whole thing. Who's a company that can write technical content from marketing to software developers? Draft.dev. They're the only one. There's not another one that does it. So super specialized, super narrow in what we focus on, and it allows us to build all of our processes and marketing around this one specialized use case and kind of company. Makes all that a lot easier. But again, you got the trade-off of it's a small total addressable market. So you're just not going to you're not going to be $100 million business in this tiny niche. Yeah.
That fear is real. That fear of having to say no to certain clients. And from what I've heard, because we've talked about potentially niching down, like Karl, you and I have talked about, for us, like, you guys should go after executive teams as opposed to just executive. And we're dipping the toe into that from a messaging standpoint, but there is concern. And I was talking to Corey Quinn, who I think you know Corey, who helps agencies niche down, and you never hear about a bad story. Like, it's always positive. I've yet to hear somebody say it was a terrible decision to try to niche down. It's always.
There's maybe some survivorship bias in that, because I have heard of people who have had to change their niche because it was just too price sensitive, for example. Like, I had a friend who started is an education company, but, like, they wanted to serve underperforming, underfunded schools, right? I mean, like, you're just putting yourself in a huge hole as far as, like, they don't have money. That's the whole problem. To solve that by asking them to pay you something, it's just not going to happen. And so there's probably, as much as I do think you should serve a niche, but I don't think you should pick it based on just what you're personally passionate about, that's probably not the way. It's probably pick it based on where there's actual market need and demand. To me, it's all about following the market demand and looking for a concentration of market demand that you can capitalize on. So financial, really specific example here. Financial advisors, they have typically 100 to 500 clients in their, small individual financial advisory firms. A couple hundred clients. They need to keep these people up to date, but they can't meet with 100 clients every single month, obviously. Like that's all they do. So instead, they do like maybe quarterly to annual meetings with most clients. And then what do they do in the midtime? Maybe send out a newsletter. That's it. But a podcast is a great medium to keep your clients informed of what you're seeing in the market, what you're thinking about, things they can do to protect themselves, common questions that come up. And just for them to remember you exist so that when their friend asks them, who's a good financial advisor, you're like, oh yeah, my guy, he's great. He does this podcast. You should check him out. Fantastic lead generation and like great ROI, even if you only have a few hundred listeners for them. So when we came into the podcast consultant, we're like, oh, that's a great niche for building a podcast production agency because they're not podcasters. They don't really want to spend time messing around with microphones and recordings and stuff. They don't want to edit files. They're financial advisors. They should be doing that. And so we give them this, essentially set them up with their own little platform that they can use to keep their current customers up to date. They don't need to have 10 million listeners or get famous or get sponsors to make good ROI on this. It's just about keeping their customers and potential customers informed. So when you find niches like that, and the reason I mentioned this is like that niche is not obvious to a non-financial advisor. If you were not a financial advisor, you'd say, well, I should go build a podcast production company. Maybe I'll go after true crime because there's tons of true crime shows out there right now. Great, but they have no money. They're all looking to get big enough to get sponsors. So what are you going to do to get them there? Like there's nothing you can really do. They're a terrible market. So you got to look for like niches that are a little bit underserved, but also have the actual budget and desire to go forward with this, not just like cool idea and there's lots of them out there. They've also got to have budget.
Yeah. So a lot to think about there for sure. All right. Let's jump into extra innings.
All right.
I got to think of better segues here, but extra innings is basically rapid fire. So I'm going to ask you some questions. You shoot off answers at me. If we want to go down little rabbit holes, we can. But so you good? Ready to roll?
Yep. Let's do it.
All right. First question. What is something that you love talking about that drives everyone else in your life crazy?
I don't know if it drives people crazy, but a lot of people can't geek out at the same level. Film, like movies in general, and directors. And I'm not a filmmaker, so I'm not a real an artist or anything. But I'm maybe more on the critic side of like I love thinking about film critically as a medium and as a form of literature and art. I think it's just super fascinating, and I even love that it changes so much with technology. I think that's what's really cool about it too. It has this like unique relationship with technology versus other forms of art, maybe, and not other forms of art do too, but like I don't know, there's some things where they feel ever present and ever true. Like music has this like long history of being recorded and being played, but film is like a very recent invention, and digital film is just an even more recent invention. And now like you can film production quality stuff on an iPhone. It's just amazing to see what people can do with that. I just geek out on that.
Yeah, you know what? I did not know that about you. Let's talk offline at some point because I'd love to keep that conversation.
Oh, that's great!
going.
I do a monthly movie night. I'm gonna have to get you in on that. This is fantastic.
Get me in. All right, I'm gonna give you a question that is not on my list. What is the most overrated movie that everybody loves and you don't understand why? Shit on a movie. Give us one.
Man, I hate doing this because like everybody looks for different things in movies. And I hate to, I hate that I'm having to couch my response to this. I don't get the Marvel movies, though. Okay. I don't get why there's so fucking many of them. They're all the same formula.
I'll tell you, you know why there's so many of them.
I know, and Star Wars is becoming that now too. I mean, the Disneyfication. Here's what, maybe the broader answer here is the Disneyfication of and like serialization of every good idea pisses me off because it just like really reduces creativity down to like some of these movies might be creative, but because they had to stick with the same 6 characters and basic plot arc, it really just sucks the life out of them, and you don't feel like you get anything new movie to movie. But
cash is king. Cash is king, Carl. Money wins. All right. What is the last thing that genuinely scared you?
So we were. I had to think about this one. You sent me this ahead of time because this is It's something I actively do try to lean into, but it is also, you don't get big chances to get scared all the time. And so I had to think about it. Last year in October, we had closed with one of our with draft.dev, we had closed one new client all year. 9 months in, one new client. It was a fairly big one, but it was not enough. And we had been slowly cutting hours, shedding the team. My business partner and I were stepping in to do some of these operational roles that we weren't used to doing, and we're trying to relearn them and things like that. And we had a conversation in October. We were like, is this it? Do we just shut this? Like, are we done with this? You know, like maybe it's time to just cut our losses and move on to the other company. And that was scary because partly because I started it 6 years ago, and it it was a significant portion of our income, but also like it was scary because it felt like I was just having this like face to face with failure, or at least I perceived it that way. It was scary because I wasn't sure if this market was even going to be there, if it was really even there anymore, if this was just kind of gone. So definitely a lot of sleepless nights around that. We did turn it around. The last 6 months have been fantastic. That's a whole nother story. It was definitely a like right at the edge moment. And the only reason we kept going is our wives told us we couldn't quit on it. So we literally went away one weekend and said, maybe we should just cut our losses. We were both going to come back and say that. And then we talked to our wives about it, and they each told us, no, you have to give it like one more Hail Mary or something, because this is not worth shutting down yet. And we didn't, thank goodness, because they were right. Yeah,
they're always right. What are we talking about?
I know.
All right. What is what's the one tool with work or in life that you cannot live without? Software.
I'm geeking out on Zoe Computer right now, which is a agent platform. So I think I was a bit skeptical on where AI was going to really be useful until the last 6 months. And the release of some of the like OpenClaw is right now really hot, but Claude has an agent platform. Zoe Computer is a great agent platform. There's a bunch of them. It doesn't really matter which one you pick. That's probably up to you and your preferences. But the fact that I can send it complex multi-step tasks and it can go do those actions on different platforms for me is just a game changer. I mean, I now when I have an email thread with a bunch of complicated backs and forths and requests and things in it, I forward it on to Zoe and I ask it to turn it into a project for us to take on next quarter, and boom, there it is with all the details we need in an organized way. And I can even ask it to assign subtasks to people from it, and stuff like that I would have had to think about so much more deeply in the past is now just like a forward and tell my virtual email, my virtual AI assistant to do it, and it works. Again, not perfectly, but fairly well. It's amazing. Yeah,
that's great. I haven't heard that one, but obviously we've heard of all the LLMs. Yeah. Claude, for me, it's Claude Code right now is what I'm really deep in building out my chief of staff. All right. What is the truth about business or being an entrepreneur that you didn't believe until you lived it?
Something I'm just now this year really coming to terms with is how much having the right people in the right seats matter. I think I was often thinking like anybody can grow to do any job, or like if I give them enough time and coaching, they can get there. I actually don't think that that's true anymore. And I think people have a pretty fixed ceiling, and your job as an owner is to find people who can actually meet your needs for the next level you have to go to. The more owners I talk to have really grown their businesses and scaled way beyond me, they just say over and over, that's the thing. And I'm seeing it now. We've kind of stalled out in certain ways, and we got to replace certain people, and it's just time. Yep.
Good answer. You got a dinner party. You got 3 guests to invite, all sitting at the same table, living or dead. Who are they?
I actually think I'd invite all my grandparents except for my dad's dad, who was kind of a deadbeat. So I've got 3 grandparents to bring into the table. It's just because I never interacted with them as an adult. And I don't know if they were great or terrible people. Honestly, that's it's hard to say because I was a little kid when they were all around. I just think it'd be really interesting to get perspective from somebody who has some family connection to me from 2 generations past, where I have no real way to know what their lives were like. And, who knows if they'd even say anything. In my imaginary world, they do, but I just mean people, their generation were a little more guarded and didn't talk about their feelings and struggles as much. But I do think it'd be really interesting to hear that.
Yeah, that's why they're called the greatest generation. Just sitting down with them and having those conversations that's a great answer to that question. Hopefully they don't hate each other as well.
Right. Yeah.
All right, last one. First concert, last concert.
So my first one was Britney Spears.
Of course it was. Of course
Mud
it was.
Island in Memphis when I was in 5th grade. Yep. Yep. Big fan. And I would still go see Britney Spears. I wish that were my last concert so I could say that was my first and most recent. But she's took her Vegas show down, so I don't know what she's doing now.
Well, you can follow her on social media. She's a little bit out there right now.
I think my wife does. And then Blues Traveler was my most recent. That was like last summer, so it's been a while. But
were you at the same show I was?
Yeah, I think we were both at there. Yeah, Ravinia. Yeah,
Ravinia.
So that was the
lineup just came out for Ravinia. Sucks.
Yeah.
It's not good. I'm not great.
I don't know. Ravinia is a little too straight-laced for my taste. I like a concert venue with some real like crusty edges, you know?
Yeah, I got you. All right, awesome. Karl, where can people find you and get in touch with you?
Yeah,
is there anything
LinkedIn.
Anything you want to plug?
No, I don't really have anything to plug right now. LinkedIn, for sure, Karl L. Hughes, and then karllhughes.com. Karl's with a K. I'm sure you'll have links in the show notes and all that. I write a lot about like what I'm learning as a entrepreneur, and I have like an agency valuation handbook that I give away on there on the website, so you can always sign up for that. Try to send out a monthly email too. So that and Retain Trust, my podcast. I mean, it's all like going to be all clearly linked together. So cool. Feel free to follow along or send me a DM if I can help with anything.
Awesome. Karl, thank you for coming on. All right. That is a wrap for this episode of Life's a Pitch. Big thanks to Karl Hughes for joining me today. If you liked it, share it, tell a friend, steal something. Make sure you go like, subscribe to this thing. I want to grow the viewership so we can continue to build and have these amazing guests on. But also remember, behind every strategy, title, or success story, there's chaos, self-doubt, and a whole lot of trial and error. We will see you next time.